Thank you, Madam President. Let me just state that this legislation before us is of vital national importance. And I would like to commend Chairman Alexander and Senator Murray for their commitment to an open and inclusive debate. They and their staffs have been unfailingly responsive, helpful, and thoughtful throughout the process. I was a longstanding member of the Education Committee, having served on the Education and Labor Committee in the other body for 14 years, on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee in this body. And I've had the privilege of working with my colleagues in the last two reauthorizations of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And again, I must commend Senator Alexander and Senator Murray for the extraordinary work they've done, and also my colleague, Senator Whitehouse, who is a major contributor to this effort. And I am hopeful and confident, because of the leadership of Chairman Alexander and Senator Murray, that we will reach a strong bipartisan outcome on this very, very important legislation. And I appreciate the opportunity to continue to work with the committee staff on issues that are very important to fair and equitable access to the core resources for learning, access to effective school library programs, professional development, teachers and principals, family engagement, and environmental education are all topics that I think are critical, and I am very appreciative that my colleagues in the committee also thought they were important and gave them very thorough and very fair consideration. I'm convinced that if you provide the resources, if you support teachers and principals, and you engage families, students will thrive. And this legislation, I think, reflects that perspective, and I appreciate very much that perspective. Our challenge and our responsibilities are to create and support learning environments that enable young people to hone their talents, discover their skills, and pursue their passions. In some respects, education is about finding a child's talent, letting them find their talent. And then if you do that, stand back, because they'll do wonderful things themselves, for their community and this nation. In fact, our nation is so much dependent upon education to achieve our noblest ideals. And as we create educational opportunities for all, we fulfill the basic, I think, aspiration of this country. And we know we still have work to do, and I'm very pleased with the work that's been done so far by the committee. We are closing the gaps in high school graduation between minority and other students, majority students, but college education gaps are widening, and that is something that must be addressed. And the debate we begin today is vital, because the Elementary and Secondary Education Act is not just about elementary schools and high schools, it's about preparing young people for what comes next, for college, postgraduate education, for careers, for contributions to their communities. And we have to start it at the beginning to get it right in the middle and the end. Again, Senator Alexander and Senator Murray have brought this perspective, this bipartisan approach, and I commend them for it. Today's bill is, I believe, an improvement over current law. The Every Child Achieves Act maintains the critical transparency and high expectation for all students that were the hallmarks of the No Child Left Behind Act. It does so while updating the parts of the law that have become unworkable and counterproductive, such as the overly prescriptive approach to school improvement and corrective action. And I'm pleased that the Every Child Achieves Act continues federal support in key areas for building strong and successful schools, including investments in literacy and school library programs, professional development to strengthen educator effectiveness, and family engagement in education. From the beginning, access to effective school library programs was a critical part of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Results from a recent National Center for Education Statistics survey show that there are still gaps in access to school libraries. Effective school library programs are essential supports for educational success. Multiple education and literacy studies have produced clear evidence that school libraries staffed by qualified librarians have a positive impact on student achievement. Now, Senator Cochran and I introduced the Strengthening Kids' Interest in Learning in Libraries Skills Act to ensure that school libraries continue to be part of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. The Every Child Achieves Act recognizes this need by including an authorization to provide funds to high-needs school districts to support effective school library programs. Soon, we will be voting on an amendment that Senator Cochran and I are offering to further integrate school library programs into the core Elementary and Secondary Education Act formula grant programs. And I encourage all of our colleagues to vote yes on this bipartisan amendment that will support student learning. I'm also pleased that the Every Child Achieves Act recognizes the importance of ensuring that disadvantaged children have access to books in their homes from a very early age. Literacy skills are the foundation for success in school and in life. Developing and building these skills begins at home with parents as first teachers. Senator Grassley and I introduced the Prescribe a Book Act to help address this issue, and the Every Child Achieves Act includes some key provisions from this legislation. We also know that teachers and principals are two of the most important in-school factors related to school achievement. It is essential that teachers, principals, and other educators have a comprehensive system that supports their professional growth and development, starting on day one and continuing throughout their careers. Senator Casey and I introduced the Better Educational Support and Training Act to create such a system. Once again, I am extraordinarily pleased that the Every Child Achieved Act includes many of the provisions of that legislation, particularly the focus on equitable access to experienced and effective educators. I remain concerned, however, that the failure to define, quote, an inexperienced teacher will mask inequities and will limit the usefulness of the reporting for parents and communities. And I hope that we can clarify this issue as we proceed forward. Family engagement is another critical area this bill addresses. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to strengthen these provisions by increasing the resources that school districts dedicate to meaningful, evidence-based family engagement activities and providing a statewide system of technical assistance that supports these efforts. And I've been working with Senators Coons and Bennett on amendments to make these additions to the bill based on the Family Engagement in Education Act that I introduced with Senator Coons and Senator Whitehouse the past two Congresses. Most fundamental to the question of whether we move closer to achieving our ideals for educational equity and excellence is resources. The grand bargain of No Child Left Behind Act was greater accountability coupled with greater resources. We have fallen short on accountability for resources. The authorized level for Title I for fiscal year 2007 was $25 billion. That's in the No Child Left Behind Act. Today, we are nowhere near that level, at only $14.4 billion. We need to be just as concerned about opportunity gaps as we are about achievement gaps. And that is why the first bill I introduced this Congress was the Core Opportunity Resources for Equity and Excellence, the CORE Act, to establish an accountability mechanism for resource equity. We must look to hold our education system accountable for both results and for resources. The Every Child Achieves Act includes some of what I propose in the CORE Act by bringing some long overdue transparency to resource equity, requiring states to report on key measures of school quality beyond student achievement on statewide assessment, including student access to experienced and effective educators, access to rigorous and advanced coursework, availability of career and technical educational opportunities, and safe and healthy school learning environments. However, transparency alone is not enough. I am pleased to be working with Senators Kirk, Baldwin, and Brown on the Opportunity Dashboard of Core Resource Amendment, which will add further provisions from the CORE Act, namely some accountability for action on disparities in access to critical educational resources. With more than 1 in 5 school-age children living in families in poverty, and roughly half of our public school students eligible for free or reduced-price lunches, we cannot afford, nor should we tolerate, a public education system that fails to provide resources and opportunities for the children who need them the most. Again, let me thank Chairman Alexander and Senator Murray for bringing this bill before us so thoughtfully, so carefully, with so much effort and so much expertise, and their staffs also. And I hope, again, we can work together on these amendments to improve an already excellent bill.